Whenever I watch something new, a movie or a show, I always find myself searching for quiet moments. Maybe it's because I have ADHD. I either rapidly bounce from one highly stimulating thing to another or retreat to the comforting silence of alone time for months at a time. But there's something more relatable about stories that do this too. They linger, you know? Many of you guys pointed it out in episode 3 of Adolescence, where Jamie is speaking with a psychologist. The tension isn't just his threats or the body language, it's all the subtext. The questions he won't answer, the crime he won't directly admit. And the more I thought about it, the more I kept coming back to those stories that spring to mind when I think about the power of silence to make a story stick with you. The Wind Rises, Moulin Rouge, Penny Dreadful, Nosferatu, and BoJack Horseman. These are the stories where the loudest moments are, to me, what's left unsaid. Ghibli is generally my go-to for impactful quiet. Now, quiet doesn't automatically mean silence. It can be the rustle of leaves or the whoosh of a turbine, the music that fills the void with color, or human sounds beyond dialogue. There's really no better example than The Wind Rises. I mean, the first 5 minutes actually have zero dialogue. And in the film, everything from riots about bank failures to the capture of traitors to the destruction of planes and entire cities is quiet. Ditto, since he was young, lived in a kingdom of dreams where his love of airplanes could escape their use as weapons of war. Why in Ditto's dreams did he imagine the planes rather than flying himself? Is he bound to his human limits even in the world of dreams? Yet the real world around Ditto is filled with the impossible. The Great Kanto earthquake's depiction is like a slow sigh heaved by the earth. Its destruction brings down buildings, roads, and fire. The clouds that choke Tokyo's sky sound more like the grumblings of a childhood monster's stomach than a colossal force of nature. Who has seen the wind? Neither I nor you. But when the leaves hang trembling, the wind is passing through. Wind is change. We experience it with our skin as much as with our eyes, nose, or mouth. Jiro and Naoko's love is characterized by such unspoken change. He's swept into her life by helping save her and her maid from the aftershock chaos, without even leaving his name. So very much like Jiro, who has little to say except in his dreams when he stands atop airplanes with Master Engineer Caproni. Years later, they meet again. Naoko is happy just to toss a paper plane with him. The tears Jiro sheds when he rushes to her side as she's dying of tuberculosis were quiet, and such devotion carried into their marriage, where Jiro would hold Naoko's hand while he worked, and she would watch him until she fell asleep. Even Naoko's death is quiet. She departs for a sanatorium, determined to recover, though the next time Jiro is reunited with her is in the Kingdom of Dreams, or in the Land of the Dead, where she tells him to live and disappears into the wind. In The Wind Rises, quiet becomes a language of its own, where triumph, love, and loss drift in and away without a word. Another such quiet departure is that of Moulin Rouge's Satine. As a musical, this movie is loud. The script is punchy and at times gives you whiplash, like you've just chugged 10 birthday cake-flavored Red Bulls and stepped off a wooden roller coaster. It should be as far away from silent yet impactful as a movie can get. But it's a story where quiet is essential. This is because what Moulin Rouge thrives on, what makes it emotionally explosive, is contrast. Take the opening. It's slow, grimy, mournful. It shows us the grit and decay that frames Satine's inevitable death. So when Christian enters the Moulin Rouge itself, it feels grander than life. An electric mashup of Lady Marmalade seduction, yes we can mania, and the crowd's here we are now entertain us frenzy. And just when the sound hits its peak, there's a full stop. Everyone turns to behold the diamond, Satine. Honestly, this movie is really made for my ADHD. It's constantly switching gears on the emotions. It's surreal, romantic, funny. In the end, Christian and Satine captivate their audience with their booming ending for the play, and the Duke isn't even the ultimate villain. Like it was for Naoko, it's something older, quieter. Tuberculosis. Satine, struggling to breathe, collapses in Christian's arms and passes away after encouraging him to keep living. Write their story. His sobs break through the screen and seem to become our own. Tuberculosis here is a symbol of romanticized suffering, of poetic tragedy. That's something I'd love to explore in another video, how a disease came to define beauty. Because for all the luxury and extravagance of the Moulin Rouge, it is not enough. Christian's loss phases out the applause, though the audience seems to still be clapping. This movie could have had a happy ending, but the message of the movie had to communicate to the viewer that love is truly the greatest thing. Not only because it can bring you such joy and purpose, but because it can cut you so deeply that it can mark you until your dying day. Death in general is a tough nut to crack when it comes to stories that linger. I feel like this is a part where contrast either brilliantly shines or where the story ends up hollow. The switch-up has to rattle a character's sense of safety. It has to make them fear for their lives and make us fear with them. Such two examples of quiet fear come from Nosferatu and Penny Dreadful. In both, a young woman is tormented by a shadow that claims her in body and spirit. In the case of Penny Dreadful, Vanessa Ives is pursued by both the father of all vampires and Lucifer himself. In public, she is clever, confident, magnetic. In private, a tearful Vanessa routinely makes whispered pleas to protect her from evil. One scene from season 1 makes this easier to understand. At a party, a mysterious man comments softly on Vanessa's lack of gloves. Normally a fashion faux pas if it did not speak of her character. She feels things that others don't. The impact of this comes as she hijacks a medium seance, channeling the ghost of her first love, hurling accusations at the boy's father for abandoning him to die, and torments him further by mocking the search for his daughter. Obviously, this is pretty terrifying, but I felt it in my gut after the possession itself. The party falls still. A beat of silence followed by Vanessa bursting out of the venue with this mad look about her. The party allowed the monster within her to break free, and the only way to put it back is to engage in the most remedial of human behaviors. As for Nosferatu, the undead Count Orlok is hidden in the shadows for most of the film. We hear him more than we actually see him. If we are to tame darkness, we must first face that it exists. The threat of acknowledging Orlok's mere presence equates fear, both for us and for the object of his desire, Ellen. Ellen speaks so often in whispers similar to Vanessa. It forms a contrast between the loud monstrosity of human society and the monsters who creep in the dark. The creaking of wood, heels on stone, carriages, rattles of chains, even the mist creates a sound that is alive. It gives our imagination space to spiral. What is the extent of the threat that Orlok poses, we wonder? When Orlok finally arrives, he brings the plague. It ravages the population, but when he calls to Ellen, he does so with a whisper as he stretches a shadowed hand over the city. However, the strongest contrast is between Ellen's terrified pleas at the start, begging her husband not to leave her, and her quiet sacrifice at the end. She ends the curse not with violence, but by giving herself to Orlok. Her slow, rasping death makes Ellen a hero. Orlok's is a leathery, rotten mess. In both stories, the real horror isn't the monster or even the reveal, it's the unknown. The howl of a wolf, an abruptly abandoned village, the threat on the horizon that haunts your dreams and waking nights, with nothing but the mere threat of its existence. Like with Moulin Rouge, BoJack Horseman is probably the furthest story from your mind when you think of quiet. He is, after all, known for his partying and is trapped for most of the series within the shadow of his younger, shinier self. His binges are erratic, filled with body horror, and his subconscious punishing him because deep down, BoJack knows what kind of person he is. However, some of the show's most memorable moments for me are the quiet ones. Like when his half-sister Hollyhock asks him if that tiny voice in her head, the one that says everyone hates her, will go away. BoJack lies that it does. Minutes before, we watched him drowning in those same thoughts, the ones telling him everyone hates him and that they're probably justified in feeling so. So much of the quiet in BoJack is what he doesn't say. It creates a cycle where he does horrible things, says sorry, gets upset when sorry isn't enough, and throws a pity party like words should magically make everything okay. During Sarah Lynn's death, BoJack goes off on a tangent that is supposed to make her feel better by putting into perspective how we're not doomed. We're just tiny little specks who will be forgotten, so only the here and now matters. And here and now, she doesn't respond. She passes away. BoJack always wants to behave like a misunderstood hero. He won't admit that he is responsible for his own misfortunes, so it poisons his mind. He understands but won't admit that while his trauma is valid, he alone holds the responsibility for his actions. In fact, he actually really kind of hates himself most of the time. Am I just doomed to be the person that I am? BoJack can't live without noise. He needs other people to distract him and praise him, like the assurance he never got from his parents. He needs the music to drown out the thoughts. The sound around him is an attempt to find inner quiet. But BoJack can't outrun what's inside him, for the loudest sound is his internal monologue, and it screams at him whether he's in a crowd of people or sitting silently on a couch. Each of these stories has been loud in their own way. The Wind Rises with its earthquakes and engines, Moulin Rouge with its electric musical numbers, the gothic horror of Penny Dreadful and Nosferatu, and BoJack's constant thrill-seeking masking his self-loathing. But what makes them stick with you? What makes them linger the way I talked about in the beginning isn't the spectacle. It's Ditto holding Naoko's hand. It's the applause fading as the teen dies in Christian's arms. It's Ellen's whispered sacrifice, Vanessa's quiet prayers, and that lie BoJack tells Hollyhock about the voice in her head going away. These moments don't need to shout to be understood. Maybe that's why I'm really drawn to these quiet spaces in stories. Like those months I retreat into silence, there's something honest about what happens when all the noise falls away. The subtext Jamie won't speak in adolescence, the crime he won't admit, that's where the real story lives. In the end, the loudest moments really are what's left unsaid. They're the spaces between words where we recognize ourselves, where we feel that discomfort that doesn't need explanation. Because the most powerful thing a story can do is give us permission to sit with what we already know, in the quiet we've been avoiding. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like my one on Department Q, where silence and justice go hand in hand. And if you've ever sat with something unsaid trying to make sense of it, ditto. That's why I'm Pickle Ditto, because whatever pickle you're in, I've probably been there too.